Hello, dear story lovers. At the amount of 1,000 subscribers, I will post a huge series of special stories for you. Subscribe now. The year was 2432, and Greg Foster, a 35-year-old botanical scientist from Chicago, found himself on a lush, alien planet light years away from the comforts of Earth. He wasn't a hero, an explorer, or a warrior. Greg's world revolved around plants. Exotic, rare, and often dangerous flora were his passion, and he had dedicated his life to cataloging and studying them. Virion, the planet of endless green, was a dream come true. Its towering bioluminescent trees, sprawling fields of phosphorescent moss, and vines that whispered in the wind captivated his imagination. Sentient plants were a novelty even for him. They seemed to have a rudimentary consciousness, responding to touch and sound in ways that bordered on intelligent behavior. It was while studying these fascinating organisms in the dense forests of Virion that Greg's fate took an unexpected turn. The jungle was alive with sounds, chirps, hums, and the occasional resonating chime from the plant life. Greg stood amidst a grove of emerald-leaved vines that seemed to pulse gently with light, his datapad recording their movements as he played classical music through a small speaker. The plants swayed in rhythm, their tendrils curling as if enjoying the melody. Lost in his work, Greg didn't notice the sudden silence that fell over the jungle. A guttural growl pierced the air, sending a chill down his spine. He turned to see a beast stalking toward him, a creature with 6 legs, sleek black fur, and eyes that glowed with predatory intent. Greg froze, his survival instincts kicking in too late as the creature lunged. Before he could react, a shadow moved in a blur. A figure, swift and graceful, intervened, wielding a weapon made of crystalline light. The creature yelped, retreating into the shadows, leaving Greg panting on the ground. The figure turned toward him, shrouded in a cloak of shimmering green fabric that blended perfectly with the surroundings. Greg tried to speak, to thank his rescuer, but the figure raised a hand, silencing him. "Be still, Earthling," she said, her voice melodic yet commanding. "The Sha beast might return." Greg nodded, watching as she scanned the area with sharp, alien precision. Her features were obscured by the hood of her cloak, but her presence exuded confidence and strength. After ensuring the danger had passed, she approached him. "You should not wander alone here," she said. "Virion's jungles are unforgiving." I didn't mean to," Greg stammered, still catching his breath. "Thank you for saving me." The figure paused for a moment, then responded, "You are welcome, Earthling." She hesitated, then added softly, "Not all who walk this world care for it as you do. Your compassion for our flora is noticed." Before Greg could inquire further, she turned and melted into the foliage, disappearing as quickly as she had arrived. Back at his camp, Greg couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious figure. Who was she? And why had she spoken as if she knew of his work? His questions were answered a week later when he received a letter hand-delivered by one of the Virionite envoys. It was written on a piece of plant fiber that seemed alive, its surface glowing faintly. The letter read, "Greg Foster, I am Anaya, the one you met in the jungle. I have watched your work, your care for our world, and your respect for life. You saved more than plants when you fought to preserve the Virionite vines, you saved a piece of our culture. In Virionite tradition, when one recognizes a kindred soul, they must act swiftly. Thus, I propose a union between us. I know this may seem sudden, but our ways are not your ways. Trust in the bond of spirit, for it is stronger than the bond of sight. Should you accept, we shall meet on the night of our joining. Until then, may the light guide you. Anaya." Greg stared at the letter, dumbfounded. A marriage proposal? From an alien he'd never seen? It sounded absurd. Yet, something about her words struck a chord deep within him. The way she spoke of trust, of unseen bonds, it was as if she understood him on a level no one ever had. The logical part of him screamed against the idea. This was madness. But the adventurous part, the one that had brought him to Virion, wondered if this was the greatest leap of faith he'd ever be asked to take. Greg read the letter again, and this time, he smiled. Maybe it wasn't madness after all. Maybe it was destiny. Greg Foster had always thought of himself as a practical man. He preferred the predictable patterns of plant growth over the chaos of human relationships. But now, faced with the prospect of marrying an IA Virionite alien he had never seen, his life was anything but predictable. The moment he accepted her proposal, everything began to change. The Virionite envoys, a delegation of stoic beings clad in organic robes, descended upon his camp to guide him through the intricate customs of their people. They informed him that his wedding would be a historic event, symbolizing the unity of two worlds. It would be held on Virion's sacred Great Plateau, under the twin moons that illuminated the planet's night sky. Greg was no longer just a scientist, he was now the human ambassador to an alien tradition. The first step was learning Virionite language and culture. Though the Virionites communicated telepathically among themselves, they had developed a spoken language for interspecies interactions. Greg found their language both lyrical and complex, with words that seemed to resonate with emotion. The envoys patiently taught him phrases he would need during the ceremony, emphasizing the importance of intonation and timing. "You must say the vows with intent," explained Arrow, one of the envoys, as they walked through the jungle. "Virionite words are alive. If you speak them with doubt, they will falter." Greg practiced day and night, determined to get it right. Each syllable felt like a step closer to understanding Anaya and her people. The next challenge was adapting to Virionite customs. Greg learned that Virionites viewed marriage as more than a union of two individuals. It was a merging of energies, symbolizing harmony between the couple and their environment. Every detail of the ceremony was designed to honor this principle. His wedding attire, for example, was no ordinary suit. The Virionites crafted it from a symbiotic fabric woven from living vines. The vines responded to Greg's emotions, glowing brighter when he was calm and dimming when he was anxious. At first, the sensation of wearing something alive was unsettling, but over time, he grew accustomed to its comforting presence. The cuisine for the wedding feast was equally alien. Greg attended tastings where he sampled dishes made from bioluminescent fruits, nutrient-rich sap, and spiced algae. The flavors were unlike anything on Earth: sweet, sour, and umami all at once. He even learned to prepare a traditional Virionite dish called kurali, a glowing stew that symbolized unity and abundance. Meanwhile, news of Greg's upcoming marriage spread like wildfire. On Earth, the media dubbed it the interstellar wedding of the century. Journalists speculated endlessly about Anaya's appearance and motivations. Some accused Greg of being reckless, while others romanticized his decision, calling him a pioneer of love. Greg's friends and colleagues had mixed reactions. His best friend, Marcus, organized a bachelor party aboard the Starlight Cruiser, a luxury starship orbiting Jupiter. The party was an eclectic mix of human and alien traditions. Guests from across the galaxy brought unique gifts: a stasis orchid from Venus, a crystal orb from the Andromeda cluster, and even a miniature black hole encased in a containment field. Amid the celebrations, Marcus pulled Greg aside. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his tone serious. "You've never even seen her, man." Greg smiled, sipping on a glowing Virionite drink. "I know it sounds crazy, but I've felt her. Through her words, her actions. It's like she sees a part of me that I didn't even know existed. How many people get that chance?" Marcus nodded slowly, clapping Greg on the shoulder. "Well, if anyone can pull this off, it's you. Just don't forget us Earthlings when you're living the alien dream." As the wedding day approached, Greg felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. He had spent weeks immersing himself in Virionite culture, but the magnitude of what he was about to do began to sink in. He was leaving behind the familiarity of Earth and stepping into the unknown. On the eve of the wedding, Greg received a final message from Anaya. Unlike the formal letters before, this one felt deeply personal. Greg. Tomorrow, we will stand together under the moons of Virion, bound not by what we see, but by what we feel. I know this journey has not been easy for you. It has not been easy for me either. But trust in the unseen, as I have trusted in you. Together, we will create something beautiful. Anaya. Reading her words, Greg felt a calm resolve wash over him. Whatever the future held, he was ready to face it together with Anaya. The great plateau of Virion stretched out like a verdant carpet under the glowing radiance of twin moons. Virion's natural bioluminescence was in full display, the trees shimmered with emerald hues, and the moss underfoot pulsed with a soft, rhythmic light. The air was filled with the symphony of chirping fauna and the gentle hum of sentient vines, creating an ambience that felt otherworldly yet serene. Greg Foster stood near the altar, a blend of awe and nervousness coursing through him. The altar itself was a masterpiece of Virionite craftsmanship, constructed from translucent crystal that refracted moonlight into a kaleidoscope of colors. Surrounding it were towering spires of organic matter, grown specifically for the ceremony and shaped by the Virionite life weavers to resemble intertwining vines, a symbol of unity. He adjusted the living suit he wore, the bioluminescent fabric responding to his racing heartbeat with a soft, fluctuating glow. He took a deep breath, willing himself to calm down. The crowd of onlookers, a mix of humans, Virionites, and delegates from other species, buzzed with anticipation. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a historic moment of intergalactic unity. A gong-like sound resonated across the plateau, silencing the murmurs of the guests. The ceremony was about to begin. Greg's palms were damp, his nerves frayed as he turned to watch Anaya's arrival. She appeared at the far end of the aisle, cloaked in a traditional Virionite robe that shimmered with an iridescent green glow. Her face was hidden by a veil of gossamer threads that seemed to ripple like liquid light. Two Virionite attendants flanked her, their movements synchronized as they guided her forward. The crowd collectively held its breath as Anaya began her walk toward the altar. Her steps were deliberate, graceful, and unearthly, her robe flowing around her as if it had a life of its own. Each step she took seemed to charge the air with an electric energy. Even without seeing her face, Greg could feel her presence strong, confident, and enigmatic. As she reached the altar, the attendants stepped back, leaving Anaya and Greg standing face to face. The officiant, an elder Virionite named Lyric, raised their hands, signaling the start of the ceremony. The vows began with the traditional Virionite exchange of energy. Lyric extended their hands toward Greg and Anaya, and tendrils of light emerged from their fingertips, connecting the couple in a glowing thread. It was a visual representation of the bond they were about to form. Greg Foster of Earth, Lyric intoned in a resonant voice. Do you vow to honor, cherish, and grow in unity with Anaya of Virion, accepting her as your partner in all things, seen and unseen? Greg swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the moment. He looked at Anaya, her veil shimmering softly, and spoke the words he had practiced so many times. I vow to honor, cherish, and grow in unity with you, Anaya. I accept you as my partner in all things, seen and unseen. The crowd murmured in approval as the tendrils of light around Greg glowed brighter. Lyric turned to Anaya. Anaya of Virion, do you vow to honor, cherish, and grow in unity with Greg Foster of Earth, accepting him as your partner in all things, seen and unseen? Anaya's voice was clear and melodic, carrying an almost musical quality. I vow to honor, cherish, and grow in unity with you, Greg. I accept you as my partner in all things, seen and unseen. The glowing thread connecting them pulsed, growing more vibrant, and then dissolved into a shower of sparkling light that rained down on them. It was time for the unveiling. The crowd leaned forward in anticipation as Anaya reached up and removed her veil. Gasps echoed across the plateau as her face was revealed. Anaya's skin was a soft, luminescent green, her features delicate yet alien. Her large, almond-shaped eyes glowed faintly, their color shifting between shades of blue and violet. Her hair wore what appeared to be hair cascaded in shimmering strands that seemed to ripple like liquid metal. She was unlike anything Greg had ever seen, yet there was a profound beauty in her uniqueness. Greg felt his breath catch in his throat. In that moment, the anxiety and doubt he had carried melted away. There was no fear, no hesitation. He smiled, and Anaya returned it a small, serene expression that conveyed warmth and reassurance. "You are more than I ever imagined," Greg whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. "And you are everything I hoped for," Anaya replied softly. The ceremony concluded with the planting of a unity seed, a Virianite tradition symbolizing growth and harmony. Together, Greg and Anaya placed the seed in a small patch of fertile soil near the altar. As they touched it, the seed sprouted instantly, growing into a vibrant, glowing vine that wrapped around their joined hands. The crowd erupted into cheers, their voices echoing across the plateau. As they turned to face the crowd, now united as partners, Greg felt a profound sense of peace. The journey that had brought him here, his work, his doubts, his leap of faith had all been worth it. That night, under the twin moons of Virion, Greg and Anaya danced together, their movements a silent promise of the life they would build. For the first time in his life, Greg felt truly seen, not just for who he was, but for who he could become. It was a wedding that would be remembered across galaxies, a story of love, courage, and the bond between two souls from worlds apart. The first morning Greg woke up on Virion as a married man was unlike any other he had ever experienced. Soft green sunlight filtered through the crystalline walls of their dwelling, illuminating the intricate patterns of bioluminescent vines that adorned their home. Anaya was already awake, sitting cross-legged on a floating cushion made of plant fibers, her glowing eyes closed in quiet meditation. Greg took a moment to watch her, marveling at the serene expression on her face. Her presence was grounding, yet her very existence still felt like a dream. He smiled to himself. He had married an alien lady he'd never seen until their wedding night, and he had absolutely no regrets. Adjusting to life as Anaya's partner was both a challenge and an adventure. Their home was nestled in the heart of Virion's vast jungles, a dwelling grown from living materials that adapted to their needs. The walls shifted with the seasons, opening to let in warm breezes or closing tightly during the monsoon-like rains. The house even responded to their moods, glowing softly in the evenings to create a calming ambience. Greg found joy in the small, everyday rituals they shared. Anaya introduced him to her morning routine of harmonizing with the jungle, a practice that involved attuning her energy to the living ecosystem around them. At first, Greg struggled to feel the connection she spoke of, but with her guidance, he began to sense the subtle rhythms of Virion's life. It was as if the planet itself breathed, and he was learning to match its cadence. In return, Greg shared his earth customs with Anaya. She was particularly fascinated by his cooking. The first time he prepared an earth-style meal, a simple pasta dish using local Virionite ingredients, she studied his every movement with childlike curiosity. Her delighted reaction to the unfamiliar flavors brought laughter and warmth to their home. Professionally, Greg and Anaya became partners in more ways than one. Combining his knowledge of Earth's botany with her deep understanding of Virion's ecosystems, they began a joint project to create hybrid plants that could thrive on both planets. Their goal was to bridge the ecological gaps between their worlds, fostering greater cooperation and understanding between Earthlings and Virionites. One of their early successes was a bioluminescent fruit tree they called the Unity Tree. It produced glowing, nutrient-rich fruit that became a symbol of their work and their relationship. The Unity Tree was later planted in the central square of Earth's largest spaceport, a living monument to their efforts. Their work also led to unexpected adventures. On one expedition to collect samples in Virion's northern highlands, they encountered a rogue swarm of shy beasts, the same predators Greg had narrowly escaped before meeting Anaya. This time, however, he was ready. Anaya stood beside him, her crystalline staff glowing with power, as Greg wielded a sonic repellent he had designed. Together, they drove off the creatures, their bond tested and proven in the heat of danger. The cultural differences between them were not without challenges. Virianite society placed great emphasis on telepathic connection, a skill Greg was still developing. Anaya patiently helped him strengthen his ability to communicate on a deeper level, but there were moments of frustration on both sides. One evening, after a particularly difficult attempt at telepathic bonding, Greg sighed heavily. "I feel like I'm failing you," he admitted, sitting beside her on their glowing veranda. Anaya placed a gentle hand on his. "You are not failing," she said softly. "Our journey is not about perfection. It is about growth. Every step forward, no matter how small, is a triumph." Her words eased his doubts, and over time, Greg's telepathic abilities improved. He found that the more he trusted in their connection, the more natural it felt to communicate without words. As the years passed, Greg and Anaya became a symbol of hope and unity for their worlds. Their story inspired countless others to embrace the unknown and to see beauty in differences. Intergalactic media often sought them out for interviews, but they preferred to let their actions speak louder than words. Back on Earth, Greg's old friends marveled at how much he had changed. Marcus visited Virion once, staying for a week in their home. He watched Greg navigate the alien jungle with confidence and ease, and when the visit ended, he hugged his friend tightly. "You're living the dream, man," Marcus said with a grin. "I mean, it's a weird dream, but it's yours." Greg laughed. "It's more than a dream. It's a life I never even knew I wanted." In their quiet moments, Greg and Anaya often reflected on the path that had brought them together. Sitting under the Unity tree one evening, Greg took her hand and smiled. "I still can't believe I said yes to a marriage proposal from someone I'd never seen," he said, his tone teasing. Anaya laughed, her melodic voice filling the air. "And I still can't believe you trusted me so easily." "I'd do it all over again," Greg said earnestly, his gaze locking with hers. "Every single step." "So would I," she replied, her eyes glowing softly in the moonlight. As the Unity tree's light bathed them in its soft glow, Greg knew one thing for certain: he had taken the leap of a lifetime, and it had brought him more than he could have ever imagined. He had no regrets, only gratitude for the love and adventure he shared with Anaya, his alien bride and the partner of his soul.